The S23 Ultra probably has the best cameras I've ever seen on any smartphone, but the ZFold 5 is probably the best phone ever for getting things done. Yeah, 2-day battery, beautiful display, amazing performance. Well, yeah, kinda useful display on this one, but feels great in the hand, and I can really get a lot of work done on this. Which one is better though? If only there was a video to help me with that. Oh, I know. Multitasking is something that both the ZFold 5 and the S23 Ultra are really strong at. But to really make the most of the experience, I really recommend using app pairing, which allows you to combine multiple apps that you can use at the same time. If you're looking for ideas, here's some of the ones that I use myself on a daily basis. On the ZFold 5, you can of course stretch this even further by having not just 2, but even 3 apps quite comfortably on the screen, depending on the apps you choose, of course. Not every single app has been designed to work this way. Taking notes while doing something else, for example, is an extremely underrated feature. Something I love doing myself whilst I'm driving, for example, is listening to music whilst having Google Maps or Waze for my directions. The Fold 5 is way better here, of course, because of that larger display, and from a safety perspective too, right? Because it's a lot easier to access the controls, whether on the Maps or the Music app, than it is on the S23 Ultra. But again, whatever apps you choose, rather than opening them both, I'd say create those groupings and put them on the Edge panel as well. You can even go one step further and create a routine. Now, routines is a really powerful way to automate a lot of things based on what you're doing or based on where you are, or even based on what time of the day it is. There are so many conditions that you can create yourself. It's really powerful. If you're coming from an iPhone, this is the equivalent of shortcuts. I'll probably do a separate video on routines alone because it's a pretty underrated feature as well. Now, the multitasking experience when using DeX is excellent on both phones. I did notice something quite interesting though. It feels a little bit snappier now on the Fold 5 in comparison with the Fold 4. It could be the placebo effect, right? It's the shiny new toy, but certainly feels like it loads faster and is more responsive as well when you're using it. One downside on the S23 Ultra is that the resolution now seems to be capped at Full HD, which is 1920 by 1080, whilst on the Fold 5 we're getting WQHD, which is a much higher resolution. Let me know if I'm doing something wrong here, but I wasn't expecting that to be different. Is it noticeable? Of course it is. There's no point denying that or hiding it. It's particularly sort of in your face when you go to watch content via DeX. YouTube itself even will cap the resolution on the video you're watching. I tried that on the S23 Ultra and I couldn't go to 4K, and I could definitely do that on the Fold 5. When it comes to multitasking, and I think you could have guessed this, but I'm gonna give this to the ZFold 5 for us here in the UK. It's just better because of that bigger display. If right now you're not too sure between these two phones, you don't know which one to pick, if this feature alone is something that you really care about, then the Fold 5 should be your pick. I didn't mention the under-display camera, but that in itself is another bonus feature as well on the Fold 5 when it comes to multitasking. Not much use for this camera in any other situation other than conference calls, but again, that extra space means you can have Zoom, Teams, or something else, as well as your notes running at the same time. But let's face it, not everyone cares about multitasking, right?
Where's the cool intro, bro?
Nah, we try not to waste people's time here. You know when YouTubers say, no, let's get straight into it? That's my version of it. Deal with it. Right, let's go outside and test these cameras. The camera on these phones are both fantastic. I prefer this mode of 4K 30 because I think it's a little bit more natural when you're doing like people recording. But both can go to 4K 60, which I do like as well, but more for product shots and things like that. There's not a lot of traffic noise here today, as you can imagine. I'm in the middle of a field and it's really not that windy today. It's actually a perfect day for recording. But I have noticed in my previous videos that the wind noise reduction is actually really good on both phones. And just to show you as well that I'm recording on the S23 Ultra without a case, hopefully it's not going to make too much of a difference. And if you do a lot of vlogging, this is the quality that you can expect from the selfie camera on both phones. Something to listen for is the difference between the microphone on this camera and the back camera. On the Fold 4, there was a little bit of a difference. Let me know if you noticed anything here. Also, I'm walking around here so you can have a feel for the stabilization as well. I like to use this camera for quick messages, quick recordings for things like Instagram Reels. And for the young ones out there, the Snapchat as well. Now, when it comes to taking photos, for me, the S23 Ultra is better. But the Fold 5 has come leaps and bounds in some areas here, in comparison with the Fold 4, for example. I was actually shocked at how good the camera is on the ZFold 5 now. And I don't know what they've done here, but when you go, okay, how much better could it be, right, from the Fold 4? But I was really taken aback, especially in portrait mode. Sure, you're getting a slight crop in comparison with the S23 Ultra, but the quality is phenomenal. Expert RAW is generating amazing results too on both, but I'll let you be the judge on which one is better. Whenever I see these comparisons, I always watch for areas in the pictures where it's either too bright or too dark, and how much of the detail you can see on those dark areas or bright areas. You know what they say, right? Well, they probably don't say this, but once you go Pro RAW, it's hard to go back into any other mode. But sometimes you just want to point and shoot, right? Something quick, and that experience is great as well. The S23 Ultra does have an advantage here that you can go beast mode, for example, right? The 200 megapixel mode is incredible. The amount of detail that you can get is almost impossible to take a bad photo now. I still think that is insane, especially when you go into the zoom modes and stuff like that. It's something that I haven't experienced before on any other phone. It's probably my age, but I always forget to mention things like Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok. I always forget to include this in my videos, but I know this might be super important to you. In the past, not many people will admit to this, but Android apps have been pretty crappy when it comes to optimization, right? iOS apps for me were always a little bit more polished, but when it comes to mainstream apps, things like Instagram and Twitter and TikTok, now the differences are starting to get very minimal now, if any. Instagram works great, applying filters, uploading reels, I know this is really important for a lot of people, and both phones behaved really well on this. By the way, actually Instagram is something that I do use a lot. I share a lot more in there than I share here on YouTube in terms of pictures and product shots. And every now and then I run some promotions in there too that you might be interested in. The profile is Alex G Tech if you want to check me out there. But let me level with you, I would say that the experience in this area is a bit better on the S23 Ultra, but it really depends on what you're doing really. Now, if you're just scrolling TikTok for fun, the S23 Ultra feels more chilled, right? It's like one-handed, almost not using any brain cells, right? which is the fun of it. Just kind of scrolling. If you want to appreciate the quality though, and kind of really look at the content, appreciate the details in some photos and things like that, then I much prefer the Fold 5, right? But because of that relaxed aspect of just, one-handed scrolling, I'm gonna give this to the S23 Ultra, but it's a close one. By the way, this whole scoring system here is pretty serious, right? I'm taking this, what I say here is gospel. Now look, it's just a bit of a fun way to present the content to you, and I hope you enjoy it. We're now entering a potentially controversial aspect, so let's deal with that first, which is the Fold 5 display and that infamous crease. Samsung, for many people including myself, is synonymous with great quality displays, and I appreciate that the display on the Fold 5 has this line in the middle where the hinge is here and it's causing it to have a visible crease, right? I'm not even gonna try and pretend to say that there isn't a crease here and even say that it's much better. Maybe a tiny bit better, but I think a lot of people miss the point really. It's 100% not gonna be for everyone, and you may well never get used to it, man. I totally respect that. But if this is something that you're not too sure about, I'd really recommend you just go and use it, right? Don't listen to people like me on YouTube or Twitter. I was there myself a couple of years ago, but it took me a few moments of actually using the device and seeing beyond the crease to enjoy the experience. As you can see here, both displays are housed in these very thin bezels, and I love them both in different ways. Browsing the socials, watching content, or simply doing some work is just superb really. There are some important differences though, like when you take these devices outside. And I mean this as a standalone improvement. There are times when it's slightly more pleasing to use the Fold 5 outdoors, but the S23 Ultra for me is brighter overall. But I also noticed it's not just about brightness. But using these devices outside, I think this is where the Fold 5 really shines for me. Both devices are fantastic actually when outdoors, especially in direct sunlight like this. And I'm gonna struggle a little bit to show you here on camera, but to the naked eye, I think the Fold 5 is really a little bit more pleasing to watch. Not saying the S23 Ultra is bad, not at all. It's actually really good outside as well. But side by side, the Fold 5 just about edges it for me. It's really strange really, because sometimes I look at the Fold and it's brighter, but then I look at the S23 Ultra and that's brighter. But I think I realize now is actually the blacks on the S23 Ultra are much deeper than the Fold 5. So in terms of brightness, the Fold 5 seems brighter in some apps where there's not a lot of blacks, but when you look at the Play Store, for example, in dark mode, you can clearly see that the S23 Ultra is a little bit easier to see. When using these devices indoors though, the display quality on both is pretty much on par really. Extremely sharp displays, awesome really to watch like YouTube videos on or even movies. And this is one of those times when I personally kind of started to forget that there is a crease. It's not something that you always forget. Every single day you see it's there. But when you're watching a movie and interacting with the content, you kind of forget that it's there. Is he not going to do an unboxing? Where's the unboxing? Unboxing. Oh my God. But how about gaming? Getting straight to the point, this one's going to go to the Fold, but let me explain. I think it actually depends. I don't play for hours, so I'm not really kind of a mobile gamer. But when I do play games, I much prefer the aspect ratio on the Fold 5. I love that a lot of the games are now taking advantage of this entire screen and filling the display with the gaming content. Now, performance-wise, I've been trying to kind of stress test it, with Genshin Impact, Call of Duty Mobile, Asphault 9. But Genshin Impact is the one, is my go-to for kind of burning mobile phones, right? I've done that. I think the last one that actually failed was the 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 12 Pro Max. After then, every flagship that I've tried has actually been okay. If any game is going to show drop frames or display dimming, this is the game that I always go to. And after about 40-45 minutes of playing this game on both phones, they were absolutely fine. Both did get a little bit warm, but nothing crazy. In comparison with older phones that used to get really hot when playing this game, this is nothing. But something really surprised me. The thing I really noticed kind of almost as soon as I started playing a game was the audio quality on the Fold 5 now. It's just wow. It's actually been a bit of a theme with the Fold 5. I wasn't expecting much of an improvement. The more I use, the more I see, oh my gosh, that's a big jump, right? The portrait was like that, the audio quality is like this, the display brightness. But just to give you an idea, check out the difference here in this clip. I'm hoping that you can hear this on YouTube, but I appreciate that you might need headphones as well to really notice it. Listening to music or watching videos, what I notice is that the S23 Ultra is a tiny bit louder, but that doesn't tell the whole story, I don't think. I think at max volume, the Fold 5 is a little bit clearer. The S23 Ultra at full volume does get a little distorted, and it's something that I picked up before as well. You know, it's very consistent with when I was doing the comparison between the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. The iPhone in that case sounded clearer to me. This can be subjective, so let me know what you thought hearing these clips. Before I forget, these videos are super hard to produce, as you can imagine. I hope you appreciate that, and if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. I'm not asking you for a vanity metric, you know, for me it's genuinely to help me getting the channel discovered out there. Especially in videos like this that are not sponsored, your likes and shares is really what makes these videos possible. And I won't ask you to subscribe unless you really like my stuff, so check out the channel afterwards, and if you do like my stuff, it would be awesome if you subscribed. And what do you get with that? I'll be here at least once a week with a new down-to-earth tech video for you. Now here's something that both these phones have, and I have to confess, because I come from a predominantly an iPhone background, right? I'm not gonna hide that. I did kind of neglected the S Pen, right? Last year, not only with the S23 Ultra, but previously as well with the S22 Ultra. But I also never got the S Pen even with the Fold 4. In my defense though, the S Pen, let's face it, right, was a little bit too big last year. It made the Fold look ridiculous, so I'd never got that. But I kind of regret now because it makes the Fold experience completely different. You know, it's something that I now can't imagine living without. And now with this S Pen case, it literally gave the Fold a completely new life for me. The S23 Ultra has the advantage here, I think, because it's got that built-in S Pen, of course, but the Fold gives you more on the main display, so taking notes or making drawings, for example, is obviously going to be a little bit better on the Fold 5. But I have to give this to the S23 Ultra for one reason. It feels better to write on the S23 Ultra. The S Pen is a little bit more slippery on the Fold 5, but I did discover something. On the Fold 4, you know, stupidly, I removed the screen protector that comes with it, that Samsung ships the phone with. I haven't done that on the Fold 5. I left that on here. And guess what? The S Pen, which works on both Fold 4 and Fold 5, feels a lot better on the Fold 4. So I'm tempted to remove the screen protector on the Fold 5, but I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous on that. I'll do a little bit more research. Please let me know what you think as well. Should I remove it, or, you know, is it safe to do that now? I'm always reading all your comments, so yeah, let me know. Battery-wise, it's early days, but it's an interesting contest, really. The S23 Ultra has been fantastic. The best phone I've ever had in terms of battery. It's not even close to anything else. But we have to admire what Samsung is doing in this space in general. I'll say this, even though it's fairly early days, the Fold 5 has come leaps and bounds, right? Is it the battery? Is it the Snapdragon chipset? I'm not sure what they've done here. For something that is basically a tablet, it has a big display in the middle, right? It's really something else what they've done here. I'm getting easily through an entire day and some. And I also noticed that, you know, standby battery on the Fold 5, I don't know if that's what you call it, but you know, when you go to sleep and you don't charge it, next morning you go and check it, and it hasn't really moved that much. So in that aspect, the Fold 5 definitely improved. From what I can tell in the last couple of weeks, you know, it barely goes down, maybe 3-4% tops, and I love that. So battery wise, I'd say it's a draw. I do get almost 2 whole days with the S23 Ultra though. My usage does vary quite a bit, but I easily get at least a day and a half with, you know, 6 to 8 hours screen on time. So this one is a tougher one. I want to give it to the S23 Ultra, but I'm also impressed with the ZFold 5. I think you can't go wrong with either, right? Both batteries are amazing. So which one do I prefer? And more importantly, right, who cares what I prefer, but which one would I recommend? Well, on one hand, I'm a sucker for the fold form factor. I love this foldable aspect. I'm in love with this, and I've been in love with it since the Fold 4. On the other hand, I love the S23 Ultra cameras. They're just too damn good. I'm gonna be using both anyway, which is a crazy setup, and I wouldn't recommend that, right? If I wasn't doing these videos, I wouldn't do this myself. So if I had to choose one for myself, and this is super hard, you know, I can't even tell it because I love both devices. But right now, it would have to be the Fold 5. Even though I care care about photo and video quality, I do prioritize the ability to do stuff, right? On a day-to-day basis when I'm actually doing work. The Fold 5 lets me do more. And really, when it comes to the camera quality, as you've seen here today, it's more than good enough on the Fold 5 now. But if you can't live with that 200 megapixel camera on the S23 Ultra and all the extra bells and whistles, right, then the S23 Ultra is going to be the best for you. Much more to come. While you're waiting for the next video, check out these ones that I've done already on the S23 Ultra and the Fold as well. Or this one that YouTube thinks you're going to like. See you soon. I'm not really going outside. The editor guy will fix this, hopefully.
Wait, you're recording already?